When the women of the village of Obete saw Adana walking to the river every dawn at exactly 4, carrying her clay pot filled with red liquid, they whispered among themselves. When they saw her pour it into the water with trembling hands, they covered their mouths in horror. When they noticed how the river seemed to darken where the liquid touched it, how the fish floated belly up afterward, how even the crocodiles avoided that spot, they knew. Something terrible lived in Adana's compound, something that demanded payment in ways that made even the bravest hunters turn away. The elders said the river would one day demand answers. The healers said no good could come from what she poured. The children sang songs about the woman with the red pot, though their mothers scolded them for it. But Adana continued. Every single dawn, the same walk, the same trembling hands, the same red liquid that was not palm oil, not clay dye, not anything the villagers recognized, and the same terrified look in her eyes that said she had no choice. Adana was born in the small village of Obede, nestled between the great forest and the winding river that fed all life in the settlement. She was the youngest daughter of a palm wine tapper who had died when she was barely old enough to walk, leaving her mother to raise 3 daughters alone. Her mother wove the finest raffia mats in the village, her fingers moving like water over reeds, creating patterns that told stories of their ancestors. Adana herself was beautiful in the way morning mist is beautiful, soft and gentle and easily overlooked. Her skin was smooth as river stones, the color of wet earth after rain. Her eyes were large and kind, always watching, always noticing things others missed. She wore simple wrappers of faded indigo, her head wrap tied in the modest style of unmarried girls. Around her waist, she wore the traditional beads her grandmother had given her, small cowrie shells that clinked softly when she walked. But Adana carried something the other girls did not, a gift that was also a burden, a blessing that felt like a curse. She could see things, feel things, know things that had not yet happened. When she touched someone's hand, she felt their future like a story written in her palm. When she looked into someone's eyes, she saw their secrets like fish swimming in dark water. The village healer said she had been touched by the ancestors. The village priest said she carried the sight. Her mother said it was a gift from her father's bloodline, though she never explained what that meant. The villagers feared her gentle touch. Mothers pulled their children away when she reached out. Men avoided her gaze at the market. Women whispered that to let Adana see your future was to invite misfortune, for once a thing is known, it cannot be unknown. So Adana grew up lonely, her gift building walls between her and everyone she tried to love. She was 17 harvests old when Okichi came to Obete. He arrived on a day when the sky was heavy with unborn rain, leading a small caravan of traders from distant settlements. Okichi was tall and strong, with shoulders broad as a yam field and hands that looked like they could crush stone, but moved with surprising gentleness. His skin gleamed like polished bronze, and when he smiled, it was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. He wore a wrapper of deep red cloth, the color of prosperity, and bronze bracelets climbed his arms telling stories of wealth and travel. He saw Adana at the market, standing alone near her mother's mat of woven goods, and something in his chest shifted. He did not turn away from her eyes. He did not pull back from her presence. Instead, he walked straight to her, his footsteps sure, his smile warm as firelight. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice deep as drums at festival time. "Adana," she whispered, surprised that he spoke to her at all. "Adana," he repeated, tasting her name like honey. "I am Okichi, and I have traveled through 12 settlements to reach this village, but I think now I know why the ancestors guided my path here." The villagers watched this exchange with wide eyes. Women stopped their bargaining. Men paused their drinking of palm wine. Children stood on tiptoes to see better. The trader from far away, speaking to the strange girl that everyone avoided, speaking to her as if she were beautiful, as if she were valuable, as if her gift did not terrify him. "You should not stand so close to me," Adana warned him, her voice soft but urgent. "I see things, things people do not want seen." Okichi laughed, a sound like thunder rolling across distant hills. "Then see me, Adana. Look into my eyes and tell me what you find." She did. She looked into his eyes, and for the first time in her life, her gift showed her something that made her heart sing instead of shrink. She saw a future, a good future, a compound filled with children's laughter, fields heavy with harvest, a man whose hands would hold her with tenderness, a love that would grow like the great tree in the village center, roots deep, branches wide, sheltering all beneath it. "What did you see?" Okichi asked, watching her face transform. "Something beautiful," Adana whispered, and for the first time since her father died, she smiled fully. Word spread through the village like smoke from a cooking fire. The trader had chosen the strange girl. The wealthy man from far away had seen something in Adana that made him stay. For 3 days, Okichi courted her in the traditional way. He brought gifts to her mother's compound, fine cloth from distant markets, smoked fish wrapped in plantain leaves, palm wine in carved calabashes. He sat with the elders and declared his intentions honorably. He walked with Adana by the river in the evening, when the water turned gold with setting sun, and spoke to her of his travels and his dreams. On the 4th day, he asked her mother for Adana's hand in marriage. Her mother wept with joy and relief. Her sisters danced and ululated. The villagers shook their heads in wonder, gathering under the great tree to discuss this impossible turn of fortune. "Perhaps her gift is not a curse after all," some said. "Perhaps the ancestors have finally smiled on that family," others whispered. Even those who had avoided Adana all her life now looked at her with new eyes, seeing the wealthy trader's choice as proof of value they had missed. The wedding preparations began immediately. Adana's mother wove a special wrapper for her daughter, indigo cloth so deep it seemed to hold the night sky within its threads, decorated with patterns of cowrie shells and white beads. The village women, suddenly friendly, helped prepare the bride, braiding her hair with care, painting her skin with sweet-smelling oils, draping her in borrowed bronze jewelry that caught the light. Okichi's wealth allowed for a celebration the village had not seen in many harvests. 2 goats were slaughtered. Palm wine flowed like the river itself. Drummers played until their hands blistered. The dancing went on until dawn, painted the sky pink and orange. And when Okichi carried Adana across the threshold of the new compound he had built for them, everyone agreed they had never seen a bride look happier. Her eyes shone like stars reflected in still water. Her smile was soft as morning light. She had found what she thought would always escape her, a love that saw her gift not as burden, but as part of who she was. For 3 moons, Adana lived in a happiness so complete, it felt like a dream from which she feared waking. Okichi's compound was spacious and beautiful, with a large central hut and smaller ones surrounding it, all with carefully thatched roofs and walls decorated with red clay patterns. Their sleeping mat was soft with layered raffia. Their clay pots were always full. Their garden grew vegetables that seemed to flourish under Adana's gentle care. Okichi proved to be everything her vision had promised. His hands were tender. His words were kind. He listened when she spoke and laughed at her small jokes. He held her at night as if she were precious as gold, as if her strange gift made her more valuable, not less. But then the dreams began. At first, they were small things, whispers in her sleep, shadows moving at the edge of her sight, the feeling of being watched by something that had no eyes. Adana would wake gasping, her wrapper soaked with sweat, her heart beating like a trapped bird. Okichi would hold her and murmur comfort, but even his strong arms could not keep the dreams away. The dreams grew worse, more vivid, more insistent. Adana began to see things that made no sense. A woman in white cloth standing at the river's edge, her face hidden by her head wrap. A clay pot filling with red liquid that dripped from somewhere Adana could not see. Her own hands pouring something into the water while tears ran down her face. and always, always, a voice whispering the same words. Payment must be made, every dawn, or the debt will consume everything you love. She told Okichi about the dreams, and for the first time, she saw worry shadow his handsome face. It is nothing, he assured her, but his voice lacked its usual certainty. Perhaps the wedding feast was too rich. Perhaps you simply need rest. But rest brought only more dreams, and the dreams brought a terrible knowing. 4 moons into their marriage, Adana woke before dawn with absolute certainty of what she must do. The knowing filled her like water fills a pot, leaving no room for question or doubt. She rose from her sleeping mat, careful not to wake her husband, and walked to the storage hut at the back of their compound. There, on a shelf she had never noticed before, sat a clay pot. It was unremarkable in every way, simple red clay smoothed by ancient hands, no decoration, no marking. But when Adana lifted it, she felt its weight like all the sorrows of the world pressing down on her shoulders. Inside the pot, red liquid gleamed in the pre-dawn darkness, thick, warm, moving with slow purpose like something alive. Her hands shook as she carried it. Her feet moved without her willing them to move. And at exactly 4 a.m, when the world was still caught between night and day, when even the crickets had gone silent, Adana walked to the river and poured the red liquid into the water. It was not blood, though it looked like blood. It was not palm oil, though it had that thickness. It was something else, something that made the water darken and swirl, something that made the fish flee and the crocodiles sink deeper into mud, something that felt wrong, in a way Adana's gift could sense but not name. When she returned to the compound, Okichi was awake, sitting on his carved wooden stool, his face unreadable in the growing light. "You found it," he said simply. Not a question, a statement. "What is this?" Adana whispered, holding up the empty pot. "What did you make me pour into the river?" Okichi stood, and in that moment he seemed different, older, harder. The warmth she had loved in his eyes had cooled like a cooking fire left untended. "It is payment," he said, "for everything we have, for everything we are. Did you think my wealth came from trading alone? Did you think my success was mere fortune?" Adana felt her gift stirring, showing her truths she did not want to see. "What have you done, Okichi? What have you bound us to?" He turned away from her, unable to meet her eyes. 5 harvests ago I was dying, a sickness that had no cure, no healing, no hope. I wandered into the forbidden forest and found an old woman there, ancient beyond counting, powerful beyond measuring. She offered me life, wealth, success, everything a man could want, but such gifts require payment. "What payment?" Adana asked, though her gift was already whispering the answer. "Every dawn, at exactly 4, when the worlds touch, when the boundary between here and there grows thin, the red liquid must be poured into the river. It feeds something. Something that lives in the water and in the forest and in the spaces between. Something that gave me everything I asked for but demands its price every single day." Adana felt the pot fall from her hands, clay shattering on the ground. "And you married me to share the burden," Okichi finished, his voice heavy with shame. "The old woman said the payment must be made by the hands of the one who benefits. But when I married you, when you became part of my household, part of my life, you became part of the debt. Now your hands can carry what mine grew tired of carrying." The betrayal hit Adana like a physical blow. She staggered backward, her wrapper tangling around her legs. "You chose me because of my gift, because you knew I would see, because you knew I would be bound by what I saw." "I chose you because I loved you," Okichi said, but the words were hollow as dried gourds. "But yes, I also chose you because I needed someone who would understand, someone whose gift would make them see the necessity." By the time the sun fully rose, the entire village knew something had shattered in Okichi's compound. They heard Adana's cries of betrayal. They saw her stumble from the compound, her wrapper in disarray, her eyes wild with grief. Women at the river whispered among themselves as she passed. Men drinking palm wine exchanged knowing looks. The elders shook their heads. The trader's wealth always had an unnatural smell, they muttered. Now we know its source. But knowing did not help Adana. Every dawn, she woke with the terrible certainty pulling at her. Every dawn at 4, she found herself walking to the storage hut. Every dawn, a new pot sat there, full of red liquid that had appeared from nowhere. And every dawn, she carried it to the river and poured it out, her hands trembling, her heart breaking a little more. She tried to resist. One morning, she stayed in her sleeping mat, refusing to rise, refusing to acknowledge the pull. But the pain that came was beyond description. It felt like her bones were being ground to dust from the inside. It felt like her blood was boiling in her veins. It felt like every breath might be her last. Okichi found her writhing on the mat, foam on her lips, her eyes rolled back. He carried her to the storage hut, pressed the pot into her hands, and half-dragged her to the river. The moment she poured the liquid, the pain stopped. "You see now," Okichi said, his voice defeated. "There is no escaping it. The debt must be paid, or we both suffer, or we both die." 6 moons passed, then 8, then 10. Adana moved through the village like a ghost, her beauty fading like cloth left too long in the sun. Her wrapper hung loose on her thinning frame. Her eyes, once bright with hope, now held only exhausted resignation. The other women avoided her, even more than before, sensing something dark clinging to her like smoke. Children ran from her path. Even the dogs would not come near. The villagers whispered constantly now. "Every dawn at 4, they said, like a curse that will not break." "What does she pour?" others asked. "What feeds on it?" The theories multiplied like weeds in an untended field. Some said she was feeding river spirits. Others claimed she was disposing of evidence of dark rituals. The bravest suggested she was paying for wealth that should never have been sought. All of them were partly right and wholly wrong. Okichi's wealth began to curdle like milk left in the sun. His trading ventures, once so successful, started to fail. Caravans were attacked by bandits, goods spoiled before reaching market. Partners betrayed him. The bronze bracelets disappeared from his arms, sold to cover debts. The fine wrappers were traded for simpler cloth. The compound that had seemed so prosperous grew shabby, its walls cracking, its roof sagging. "It is not enough," Okichi said one evening, his voice hollow with despair. "The payment you make each dawn. It is no longer satisfying what we owe. It wants more." Adana looked at her husband, and her gift showed her the truth she had been avoiding. This man, who she had loved, who had seemed like salvation, was slowly being consumed by what he had bargained for, and she was being consumed alongside him. The thing in the river, the thing that took the red liquid each dawn, was drinking their lives away one day at a time. "What did you ask for?" Adana demanded. "What exactly did you bargain for with that old woman?" Okichi's face crumbled. "Everything. I asked for everything. Wealth, success, a beautiful wife, children, respect, long life. I was young and dying and desperate. I did not count the cost." "And what was the cost?" "My joy," he whispered, "my peace, my ability to love freely, and eventually, my life. The red liquid delays it, feeds it something else instead of me. But one day the payment will not be enough. One day it will come to collect what was truly promised." That night, Adana lay awake while Okichi slept fitfully beside her. Her gift stirred and showed her possible futures, branching like paths in the forest. In one future, she continued the dawn ritual until it consumed her completely, until she was nothing but a husk carrying pots to the river while her husband withered beside her. In another, she fled the village, but the debt followed her like a shadow. the pain finding her wherever she ran. In a third future, darker than the others, the thing in the river grew tired of substitutes and came for them both. But there was one more path, narrow, dangerous, requiring courage she was not sure she possessed, a path that led back to the beginning, back to the source of the bargain. When dawn came, Adana did not go to the storage hut. Instead, she walked in the opposite direction, into the forbidden forest where no sensible person ventured. Okichi woke and called her name, panic in his voice, but she did not turn back. The pain would come, she knew. The debt would demand its payment. But she walked anyway, her wrapper catching on thorns, her feet bleeding on sharp stones, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She walked until she found the place Okichi had described. A clearing where the trees grew in a perfect circle, where the ground was bare earth that nothing would grow upon. And there, sitting on a stool carved from a single piece of ancient wood, was the old woman. She looked exactly as Adana's visions had shown her. Skin like dried leather, white hair like spider silk, eyes that held the darkness of deep wells. She wore a wrapper of cloth so old it might have been woven when the world was young, and around her neck hung beads that clicked like bones touching. "You come seeking release," the old woman said, her voice like wind through hollow trees. Not a question, a knowing. "I come seeking truth," Adana replied, forcing herself to stand tall despite the pain beginning to pulse through her body. The dawn had passed. The payment had not been made. The debt was awakening. The old woman smiled, showing teeth that were too white, too sharp. "Your husband bargained poorly, as young men do. He asked for everything and offered nothing specific in return. So I took what seemed fair, his capacity for genuine joy, his peace, and eventually, when the substitute payments no longer satisfy, his life itself." "And me?" Adana gasped, the pain growing stronger. "What did I do to deserve being bound to his bargain?" "You married him. You joined his household. His debts became yours. That is the way of such things." The old woman tilted her head, studying Adana like a buyer examines goods at market. "But you are different. You carry the sight. You can see what others cannot. Tell me, child, what do you see when you look at me?" Adana looked, and her gift showed her something that made her blood run cold. The old woman was not old, not really. She wore age like a wrapper, but underneath was something else, something vast, something that existed in the spaces between heartbeats, in the silence between breaths, something that fed on bargains and desperation and the foolish promises of dying men. "You are not human," Adana whispered. "Very good," the old woman purred. "I am what happens when the forest grows hungry, when the boundaries thin, when people forget that every gift has a price and every bargain has teeth." The pain was unbearable now. Adana fell to her knees, her body convulsing. Blood trickled from her nose. Her vision went dark at the edges. "Please," she gasped. "There must be a way to end this." "There is always a way," the old woman said, leaning forward. "But the way requires sacrifice. Your husband bargained his joy and peace for life and wealth. To break the bargain, those things must be returned." "He has no wealth left," Adana managed through gritted teeth, "and his joy and peace are long gone." "Not his," the old woman said softly. "Yours." Adana understood then. The choice being offered. She could break the bargain, free them both from the daily debt, end the dawn ritual that was consuming her life. But the price would be her own joy, her own peace, her own capacity to feel happiness. She would live, but it would be a life drained of light, a future painted in shades of gray, an existence without the ability to love or laugh or hope. "If I agree," Adana asked, "Okichi goes free? Completely free? The debt is erased?" "His debt, yes," the old woman confirmed, "but you will carry the weight. Not as a daily ritual, but as a permanent emptiness. You will wake each morning feeling nothing. The sun will not warm you. Music will not move you. Love will be a word without meaning. You will exist, but you will not truly live. Adana closed her eyes. Her gift showed her this future clearly, showed her the years stretching ahead, colorless and cold, showed her Okichi recovering, rebuilding, perhaps even loving again, while she remained a hollow shell. It was not fair. It was not right. He had made the bargain, and she would pay the price. But she also saw the alternative, saw them both consumed, saw the thing in the river finally taking what it was owed, saw Okichi's death and her own, and the village speaking of them in whispers as a warning to others. She thought of her mother, who had raised 3 daughters alone after her father died. She thought of her sisters, who had families now. She thought of the children in the village, innocent of all this darkness. And she thought of Okichi, who had been foolish and selfish, but who had also, in his way, loved her. "I accept," Adana whispered. "Take my joy, take my peace, but free him from the bargain." The old woman stood, and in standing, seemed to grow larger, more terrible, more real. She placed her hand on Adana's head, and the touch was like ice, like fire, like the end of all warm things. "It is done," she said. The pain stopped instantly. The pull toward the river vanished. The debt that had lived in Adana's bones since her marriage dissolved like smoke. But so did everything else. The morning light looked gray. The bird song sounded flat. Her own heartbeat seemed distant and unimportant. When Adana returned to the village, walking slowly through the forest, the sun was high. Okichi ran to meet her, his face wild with worry and relief. He had felt the debt break, felt the weight lift from his shoulders. He grabbed her hands, tried to pull her close, babbling questions and apologies and promises. But Adana felt nothing. His touch was neither warm nor cold. His words were sounds without meaning. She looked at him, this man she had loved more than her own life, and felt only emptiness where love had lived. The villagers gathered as word spread. The daily dawn ritual had ended. The strange payment had ceased. Women whispered at the river that the water already seemed clearer, healthier, free of the dark taint that had been fed into it for so long. Men at the palm wine bar shook their heads at Okichi, some with pity, others with contempt. The elders spoke of the price of ambition and the folly of bargaining with forces beyond understanding. Adana moved through it all like a sleepwalker. She returned to her mother's compound, unable to stay in Okichi's home. Her mother wept to see her daughter so changed, so hollow. Her sisters tried to comfort her, but comfort requires the ability to be comforted, and Adana had sacrificed that along with everything else. 3 moons later, Okichi left the village. His wealth slowly returned, his business ventures began to succeed again, but he could not bear to look at what his bargain had cost. Some said he spent the rest of his life trying to find a way to undo what was done, searching for healers and priests and wise women who might restore what Adana had lost. But such things, once given, cannot be taken back. Adana lived. She helped her mother weave mats. She walked to the market. She ate and slept and moved through the rhythms of village life. But she was like a clay pot with a crack that could not be mended. The water of life poured through her and found no place to rest. The villagers spoke of her in whispers, a cautionary tale told to young people who dreamed of wealth and easy success. "See what comes," they said, "from bargaining with forces that should not be disturbed. See what price is paid when we want more than life offers freely." And every dawn at 4, though Adana no longer went to the river, she woke anyway. Her body remembered the ritual even though the debt was gone. She would lie in her sleeping mat in her mother's compound and stare at the darkness, feeling nothing, until the sun rose and painted the world in colors she could no longer appreciate. Years passed. The story of the woman who poured red liquid into the river became legend. Mothers told it to daughters. Fathers told it to sons. "Never bargain what you cannot afford to lose," they warned. Never trade tomorrow's peace for today's pleasure. Never let desperation make your choices, for the cost is always higher than you expect. And somewhere, in the forbidden forest where the trees grow in perfect circles, the old woman sits on her ancient stool and waits. Because there will always be another desperate soul, another dying man or woman willing to promise anything for one more dawn. Another fool who believes they can outwit forces older than memory. The red liquid was never blood, the wise ones said. It was possibility, potential, the capacity for joy that makes life worth living. And Adana had poured it into the river every dawn until there was nothing left to pour but her own. She lived many more years, growing old in her mother's compound. When she finally died, they said she went peacefully, without fear or pain. Because how could she fear? How could she feel pain? She had sacrificed those capacities long ago. The village buried her with honor, for she had saved her foolish husband and taken his burden upon herself. But they also buried her with sorrow, for they understood the truth. Some sacrifices are not noble, some prices are too high, and some bargains should never be made, no matter how desperate the need. And they lived knowing that every dawn at 4, somewhere in the village, someone would wake and remember. Remember the woman who poured red liquid into the river. Remember the price of wanting too much. Remember that joy, once traded away, can never be bought back. The end.